and welcome to our Across the Borders live stream with DanceWize New South Wales and DanceWize here in Victoria, also celebrating our 25th anniversary, 25 years of providing services, providing information, education, resources to dance floors around Victoria, now around New South Wales as well. And, you know, there's also other things that are in the works. I don't know if we can talk about those now, but there's always exciting things on the way, especially after such a non-exciting year. So that's what we're going to talk about, what has been going on this year. And we're going to start by just going around, and I'm going to go to my top left, top right. I don't know how this works. Jessie, a quick introduction, and then we'll move around.
Hey, I'm Jessie. I've been with DanceWize across New South Wales for the last 3 years, and I've been in Duffel for the last 11 years. So, yeah, part of the community, love this work, and happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Bridget. I'm a part of DanceWize for, I think, the past 3 years down in Victoria. I use they, them pronouns. Hi.
And I'm Adam. I've been with DanceWize as the DanceWize New South Wales coordinator for about 1.5 years, and volunteered for about a year before that as well. Yeah, excited. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Erika. I've been a DanceWize New South Wales coordinator for 1.5 years, but I've been part of the program since it started in November 2017. I've been going to music festivals for 15 years and Doofing for a bit over 10 years now.
Just fixing some sound problems. I hope that those are mostly gone now.
So, what a friggin' year. Like, it has been so challenging to stay at home for so long and to be sort of separated from community and family, especially in Melbourne. It's definitely been a big challenge, and something I've noticed and I've spoken to a lot of my community about is the difference of staying at home alone with your thoughts for a lot of it, and what this has brought up for a lot of people. So, for me, I found myself smoking more cigarettes and cannabis and drinking a little bit more to pass the time or to block out the sort of stress of the world. And so by the time lockdown number 2 came, I was a bit sick of it, sick of myself, sick of my habits, and I guess I challenged myself to do something different and to get something out of lockdown number 2. So I made a commitment to going back to my psych and sorting out some stuff, and yeah, I'm really proud of the fact that it's been sort of nearly 4 months now that I haven't habitually smoked weed. So finding some new coping mechanisms, which was quite challenging. I think it's really easy for us to fall into old habits when we're locked at home, and there's no new input, there's nothing new to distract us in the world, there's only concern and worry. And yeah, so I'm proud of that, but it's a hard slog, and I do understand that overall in Australia, I think in lockdown periods, alcohol and cannabis use has gone up, which is understandable. So yeah, I think having to address your own mind and deal with some stuff, it behaves differently in different people. And I was lucky to have some support to start unwinding some of those bad habits. So that's been my year. The brain is a hard one. Who's next?
Yeah, I guess I'll speak to it. This year has been really, really difficult. I'm sure everyone knows. I've always considered myself to be a social butterfly, and I kind of felt like I had my little butterfly wings completely ripped from my back. And I normally get all my energy from being in large groups of people, being on a dance floor, all those types of spaces. So having to find a new way to keep myself happy and healthy during this time was a real challenge for me. I've now actually come to appreciate quiet time, and it's not something I ever thought I would come to appreciate. With my own substance use, I found that I was drinking more during the week. That's something I used to be more just binge drink on the weekends with friends, but now it was kind of through the week, but less of it. So I did find the first time I went and saw friends to drink alcohol, and I was excited to see them, and I was trying to keep up at the same pace I used to. I flatlined myself by I don't know, midnight and had to be helped into an Uber. I could barely walk, and that's not something that's happened to me in like 10, 15 years.
I think for me, this year I know the start of the lockdown was April 2020, so it was a whole month of 420, which definitely, it sort of drew attention to, I guess, my cannabis usage in that time. But I think like on the other end of the spectrum, I spent the whole month of September sober. And I think one thing that I sort of really realized through that time is that you do have a relationship with substances, even if you're not using them. And it's really powerful to just actually investigate what your relationship is, and then maybe think about like what you want it to be. And I think sort of towards the end of this year and the end of our sort of lockdown periods and things starting to open back up, fingers crossed. It's been really powerful to actually just have an awareness of that, and having some time out of partying scenes where you might just, take what you're given in a lot of ways has been really powerful. And I think, it's useful moment to reflect.
Yeah, I found for me that I don't think that most of my substance use really changed. I probably did drink alcohol more frequently, like not like a lot of alcohol, but just having a drink, I think, for the sake of something to do, definitely became more common. I found over lockdown, because I was still working both for Harm Reduction Victoria and for another organisation, I didn't really experience this like boredom as much as other people did, or like social isolation. And because I am quite introverted and a bit of a homebody anyway, I don't feel like I personally was too impacted. I found the main thing that I struggled with was just the anxiety of not knowing kind of when things would happen and what would happen, to what extent, and especially for like when they had the 5K rule, because I take a lot of medications that my psychiatrist has to sign off on. And so being able to access those, which I can't always access from every pharmacy, was probably, I think, the main thing that I struggled with. And it ended up being fine in the end, but just sort of not knowing whether or not I would have to, ask for like longer prescriptions and things like that was probably something that I found difficult.
Oh, yeah, you've just reminded me, B. I tried to, at the beginning of lockdown, I was unsure if I'd be able to get my asthma medication in time, and went to get 2 Ventolin puffers and 2 of my other prescription medication, and the chemist knocked me back because a bunch of people last year in the fires and a bunch of people at the beginning of lockdown had started, even non-asthmatics were starting to buy out all the Ventolin from chemists, and so they would only allow you 1 at a time, which is pretty limiting if you need it on you at all times and it can't run out. I just remembered that. That was a strange sort of outcome of people having to prep to stay hunkered down,
I think there's been a lot of those sorts of experiences, especially with some of the panic buying that we saw, especially at the start of the first lot of lockdowns. I think people started to get used to the fact that toilet paper wasn't going to run out, but you could make the shops run out of toilet paper if you happen to buy all of their toilet paper supplies. Then yes, the shops don't have distribution that's quick enough. But we've also had 2 very different experiences here in Victoria and in New South Wales, especially in regards to the way that we socialise. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how we've been socialising, especially over the past sort of 6 or 7 months, starting maybe with New South Wales. Erika, Adam.
I think it definitely changed though. There's no doubt about that. It was, at the start when we had our own lockdown, I think it was still a little less strict than you folks in Vic, but yeah, it did make a lot of things happen, like transitioning to like Zoom hangouts with your friends, which I got to admit wasn't really something that quite worked for me. I don't think I get the same stuff from a Zoom call as I do with a normal social situation, but I don't know, there was some fun times on Zoom. We did have a 420 Zoom sesh with a couple of friends, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think it's been also interesting coming out of that now. It was only a couple of months in which there wasn't a lot of socializing going on, but I also, like Erika, find that I'm generally a really social person and thrive in those kind of big social environments. But the last couple of social events I've been to, I've found that like I'm quite anxious. I've had to literally like exit the event for a bit and just sit for a while because I'm quite overwhelmed. And it's quite funny to see that sort of social muscle like weaken so quickly. But yeah, hoping it gets time to strengthen again soon.
It took me a really long time to even want to start seeing people again, even though we were permitted to start seeing people in New South Wales. I've got a number of friends who are immunocompromised. I've got my own like health history and stuff, and this particular type of disaster brought out a lot of sort of anxiety in me about socializing and seeing people and wanting to minimize the risk to myself and to my friends, particularly because my main contact that I was seeing, my friend doesn't have the best of health and wouldn't be able to probably survive getting COVID. So I found I did have to become very reliant upon online methods, and I would agree Zoom is not the same. I did find putting a Zoom trivia night on worked really well, breaking out into groups. And I did do a fair bit of online, like sort of Dungeons and Dragons role playing, which if anyone goes into a lockdown again, I highly recommend dedicating 8 hours of your day with a couple of mates playing one of those types of games, because you do all of a sudden forget about the world you're in and you're just wrapped up in this new type of universe. I think it's a great way to sort of, interact with your friends with it kind of has a purpose and structure to Zoom, because I find that you need that sort of structure to the conversations on Zoom, because otherwise you all end up cutting off each other over and over again and the sounds kicking in and out, and you really realize how much you miss music when you're talking to your friends and stuff. Turns out Discord, you can listen to music and chat and have video. So because of the situation that has been brewing in Sydney over the past few days, which hopefully won't progress any further over this season, I guess I'm already starting to think of like strategies of how I'm going to socialize over New Year's if we're suddenly in a lockdown again. And those were some things that worked for me last time, along with playing video games, like playing Call of Duty, which is luckily a cross-platform video game. That does help bring some structure to online engagement. Otherwise, it seems to only work in one-to-one FaceTimes. You can't really have that group communication.
While we're about to get an answer from Jessie and B as well, if you do have any comments that you want to make in the chat, please do leave us a comment as well. We're looking at the comments. We'd love to hear the sorts of experiences that you've been having, or maybe some things that you've found that have been really helpful. Jessie, to the Victorian experience.
Wow, there's so much that I think I've been noticing in social media and stuff. Everyone else is like, oh, Melbourne is a soft, it's just a bit of lockdown. But it's been a really jarring experience to be down here in a hard lockdown. And I don't think a lot of the other states really can understand it. Not only was the sort of anxiety of not being able to socialise, which, we know is important, but it feels like a privilege sometimes. There's the more health-focused aspect of socialising, like looking after your mates if they're having a really bad mental health episode, or needing someone to debrief with if they can't afford professional support, that sort of thing. To have gone through a hard lockdown down here, you can't, I was feeling super anxious about the health of some of my friends who were living outside the 5K bubble, or who I wasn't allowed to have a household bubble with, and how I was supposed to be able to support them, even as simple as giving hugs. I mean, we underestimate the power of physical touch in terms of our wellness, and that was one of the hardest things about the sort of locked down setting that we were living in Melbourne. And then fast forward to the end of lockdown, and it got really overwhelming to be free again. I have been slowly stepping up my social engagement because I'm finding that I'm getting really overwhelmed and sensorily overwhelmed. Too many people standing so close together, when I've been taught that people have germs and I should stay as far away from them as possible in the last 6 months. You really get conditioned to this thinking that you can't be in close contact or close quarters with anyone. So there's that. There's this sort of nagging feeling of anxiety during lockdown about, you know, if I go 6Ks out of my bubble to find a tree-lined space, am I going to get in trouble for it? Am I going to get fined? Like, you know, what if I have to go to another chemist if they don't stock what I need? And I remember we did a service delivery at Edinburgh Gardens for DanceWize recently where, you know, DanceWize was our first time back in the season of being able to support people and educate. Bunch of people down in the park with some sound systems and stuff, and all of our team, it was only a short shift, 5.5 hours, but all of our team responded back that they had forgotten how to communicate, that we have not been using words in groups for 6 months. And not only did that social muscle atrophy, like Adam said, but the words were coming out jumbled, all like feeling like the connections in your brain were completely busted. And so even having a small conversation with someone, it's jilted. You can't remember certain very easy phrases. You can't figure out how to approach a stranger again to talk about this stuff. So it was quite interesting to step back into a social setting of, especially education. I don't know. I think most of what I've learned this year has been internal, and I have forgotten how to human in a social setting. But coming back to it, I mean, I was in a festival recently, and you could tell who the Melbourners were because they were coming at each other, standing very distant and being like, "You're from Melbourne? Yeah, I'm from Melbourne. How fucked is this?" Like, how weird is it to be around people again? It's I feel like I'm taking the blinkers off finally.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been a really strange learning curve. Similar, like I've really struggled with like Zoom, and sort of online catch-ups aren't something that I think I ever really got used to. But also now sort of being able to see people in person is also a bit confronting because there's so many people that I'd like to see, but it's still that kind of, oh, well, we should only sort of be kind of keeping into these bubbles, and there's these limits. And even like thinking about, oh, well, if we have a house party over New Year's and we can only invite 30 people, like who do we cull? It's been really, really strange, and not something that I've really had to think about before. And yeah, it has been really difficult to learn how to sort of just communicate again, like face to face with people, especially because, yeah, again, I'm someone who's quite sort of in my own world a lot of the time. And I like being able to interact with people either like in a quite intimate session, kind of like having coffee with one other person, or maybe going on like a hike or a camping trip while we're all doing other sort of activities. And I'm not someone who's kind of constantly craving social interaction. So seeing all these people that have really struggled over COVID and over lockdown, then sort of being around me and wanting to just get some sort of like their social needs met, I'm finding that really difficult to be able to provide that to other people, because that's not sort of how I am as a person. So that's been a really interesting experience to have.
And in the comments on our Facebook Live, thanks for joining us. But there's a second for games in lockdown. I think that's actually been something that's really centered me, playing a computer game with a friend who I actually used to play this game with him back when we were 13 years old. So it's kind of a nice, like, I don't know, a bit memories. I can't even remember the right words. I'm having that, like, oh geez, it's like we're socializing and I can't do it. As we sort of said, we are kind of opening up a little bit slowly, although now there's a speed bump in New South Wales way. But as we're starting to relearn how to interact with each other. So do you guys have any tips for people, especially Jessie, as you've just been to a party over the weekend and had a bit of an experience there? Tips for people as things are opening up again on how to ease back into it comfortably.
Yeah, one of my biggest concerns for the change over this year is that we've forgotten that our tolerance has dropped for certain substances, even with alcohol, and our tolerance to input, so our tolerance to stimulus has dropped as well. And what didn't used to make us feel overwhelmed can very easily make us feel overwhelmed these days, especially at parties or social settings and stuff. So I think we need to be mindful of that. I think we need to be mindful of the fact that the set and setting essentially has changed dramatically this year. So even if you feel like your tolerance hasn't dropped, the set and setting around us has changed dramatically. So there's increased social anxiety everywhere, global anxiety. Think about who you can go to for support if you are feeling unwell during an experience, especially if you've got COVID restrictions in place. I think these pre-planning things need to come into it a lot more. It's worth saying that I think the drug supply may have been interrupted with border closures. So in terms of quality of the substances you're taking, I would always test what you're planning to take and start with the smallest amount, because, again, we are the product of our environment, and our environment this year has been really, really, really altered. So I find even with, a couple of drinks, I mean, I can mirror what you said, Erika, earlier. I stopped drinking for about a month just to see if I could earlier this year. And then I was like, woo, we did it. And then had one night of a birthday celebration for my partner. I had 6 drinks and I was not feeling too crash shot, and it wasn't even that much. So I think it's quite easy to forget that we develop a tolerance for all things partying, and that tolerance has been wiped out this year. So yeah, please, my request for all of our beautiful community is to please take it easy and step back into it. Don't blast off back into the party atmosphere, because I think you might find yourself in trouble if you do. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that sort of taking it easy and being cautious perhaps applies even more to people who've been having a rougher time. If it has been a challenging period for you, I think there's a tendency for the excitement and the potential for a really good time after a really hard time to be even more exciting and something you really want. So I think it's really important that if it has been hard, for me, I feel like it has been hard, it's really important to be really conscious of that going into things. And also as a community, looking out for our mates and our friends who've been going through a really hard time and checking in with them extra in those kind of spaces.
I definitely agree with everything that both Jessie and Adam have said. Definitely keeping an eye on your friends and how they're responding, if that is, because there can be such a desire when you're finally with people again to just smash that down. I want to drink and take so much that I want to make the entirety of 2020 erased from my mind in one night, and it'll be all good, and I'm going to have a great time with friends. It's something that I know I've done, which can be quite self-destructive, and I think it's something to watch out for in your peers and friends. I know quite a few people, as well with myself, who've lost people this year through suicide, which is something that it hurts, and I don't think we're quite done with dealing with the trauma that we as an individual, as a collective, as a society, as the entire world has dealt with. And often with traumatic experiences, it can take a long time for us to feel the complete repercussions of what has occurred. Some tips to help you when you're going out there. So you know how when you're young and you want to get the biggest cup of soft drink and you're looking at the biggest, fattest glass compared to your siblings' one, which is shorter and taller, and you're trying to eye up which one has more, and you're always wrong? What you should do is when you go into a party, and if you're mixing drinks, bring your own cup that you drink from all the time. Worst thing that happens is you lose it. It's no big deal. But it's much easier pouring drinks into a cup that you use all the time. You're more likely to know how that one is going to hit you. Bring a shot glass that's attached to your spirits bottle. That way you are pouring one standard drink, because trust me, you cannot eyeball a standard shot. Only the best bartenders in the world could do that without a shot glass. If you are drinking spirits, make sure that it's inside a taller glass with plenty of soft drink in there. Don't just pour those spirits up to the top, because you're going to completely knock yourself out. Eating is definitely not cheating. I know that some of us are feeling the COVID weight at the moment. Eating a meal before you drink is not going to like suddenly make you gain 10 million pounds. What it's going to do is make sure that you actually have a good night for the rest of the night, and you're not going to land up vomiting your guts up in a toilet, which is the last thing anyone wants to do, particularly when we've become so aware of germs. Oh, fucking gross. And get yourself your own, if you're a ketamine user, get yourself your own ket spoon. Ketamine and all sorts of drugs right now, as Jessie said, are destabilized in what their strength. So by having your own piece of equipment, it can help you at least know when you're having a bit of a bag, is this bag stronger or weaker or larger? Because every single person's spoon is completely different, and some of those are what I call massive danger spoons, where they're heaps big. Also fentanyl testing strips. Get yourself some and test your ketamine, test your cocaine for it. If you do see one of your friends beginning to pass out, double check them, call an ambulance. If you've got naloxone, administer naloxone. Does someone else want to go? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep ranting on and on and on about 10 million different ways to keep yourself safe.
Just quickly, thank you to those who are sharing in the comments. Hey, saying that Facebook support groups have been really helpful during lockdown, and again, regular games nights. So it seems like games are a very common theme. I suppose it's something that we can easily do, especially. I mean, I don't know if people are referring to sort of card type games or computer games. I suppose it's a bit of both, depending on what your flavour of game is. But Jessie or B, did you want to add something? And please do keep those comments coming in the Facebook comments there.
I'll just, I think Jessie already spoke about it briefly earlier. Just really thinking about, coming back to set and setting. I'm someone who really enjoys psychedelics, but I also really enjoy psychedelics in a specific environment. And I think people are, again, getting excited now that they can go and see their friends again and things are opening up, and wanting to use things like acid again, but just being really aware of the environment that you are going to use it in, and if that is a safe environment for you and something that you're comfortable with, and the people you're around are people that you feel safe tripping with, I think is something that even like people that have been tripping for years and years and years should just keep in the back of their mind, because you'll never know exactly how things will turn out. And even just like people who aren't sort of sure how much of the drug they're using and all that kind of thing, I think it's just really important to kind of be aware of that, and just take it slow.
Yeah, I would agree, B. I mean, I think we get dosage wrong a lot in Australia, even in something as simple as a spliff. I mean, it took me years to learn that for me, the correct dosage for cannabis is not the entire spliff or, a whole something. It's maybe 1 or 2 tokes, and that is enough. And I've been regularly sort of taking more than I need in the past, and it does have an impact over time. But I think with things like psychedelics as well, it becomes the way that I see it is it becomes not a practice, but you develop an ability to transverse that landscape with ease. But if you haven't done it in a while, it's really, really difficult to remember what it's like to look after yourself in that space and in that realm. And I think even if you're used to taking a tab or 2 or whatever, we don't know what's in it necessarily at the moment. You've got to start with a tiny bit, see how you go, because shooting yourself back into that realm again can be very disorienting. Like, you've probably had a break from it for the better part of a year. So, yeah, start really, really slow, like less than you think that you need, and go from there. It is the best approach for safety. Obviously, keeping in mind that, there are risks associated with using any kind of drug, and it's not completely risk-free. But, yeah, it's something that we should be really, really mindful of, really cautious of.
Jane in the comments also just warning everyone, I guess, or reminding everybody to be aware of post-lockdown social anxiety and harsher calm downs. It might take longer, more than the usual time that you're used to get those good feelings back, and maybe some tips on how to self-soothe in a time that's been very just self-encapsulated, self-insulated. How do we self-soothe after these social times?
Candlelight shower was always my favourite. And self-massage. Getting back into your body, making it cozy. It's a good self-soother.
Nesting.
Nesting.
Making sure the nest is all set up. Like, if you can clean the house a bit beforehand, so as long as the party's not at yours, because there's nothing worse than waking up feeling like that scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas where Johnny Depp has got the like crocodile suit on and stepping through the hotel. It's the last thing you want to be doing when you're feeling fragile. Have Zupa Dupas ready for summer. Already think about like what type of TV shows, snacks. Make sure you've got money or something like that to Uber Eats and treat yourself along those sorts of lines. And sometimes just reminding yourself when you do have those sort of like darker thoughts is to acknowledge that darker thought and go, okay, I hear it, but this is, I believe, is a lot stronger because it's a come down, and this come down will pass. I've just got to ride it out, and I'm going to cuddle my cat and just like send lovely like gifts and memes to my friends and stuff, and just do what it can to just look after yourself and be kind. You don't feel like you've got to be productive. Nest away until you feel better.
And I think just plan and know your own body. I found, like for me, if I take a substance like MD on, say, a Saturday night, I won't feel the blues and sort of that come down until maybe about Wednesday. And so I'll have a couple of days where I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Like, that was great. Everything's good. And then I'll find myself like crying in the supermarket and just being like, what's going on? And so I think just kind of knowing your own body and how your body kind of metabolizes different things so you can plan, so you can have that kind of cozy nest space. And also Kipo. I found this show called Kipo on Netflix during lockdown, and it was the most wholesome, amazing, just little sweet show that I've ever seen in my entire life. And so Come Down on Kipo is a winner in my eyes.
One of the suggestions in the
Kipo that come down away.
Sad movies in your doona. Sometimes you need to have a therapeutic cry, and also flow arts and music. Yes, if you're feeling up for getting out and getting into your flow, or just having a little tear in your doona. Parties are going to be affected.
I would like to take this moment to...
Oh, sorry, Kate.
I would like to take this moment to recommend some killer tunes for chill times. So I don't know if you have Spotify or even YouTube, type in lo-fi. They've been going off for the last sort of 5 years. These really, really beautiful compilations, lo-fi. And then there's this gentleman from Iceland called Olafur Arnolds. That's like Olafur. Just type Olafur into Spotify and it's going to make your heart break open. It's so beautiful.
If there are more suggestions, keep them coming. I'll chuck a few. I'll try and chuck them in the comments. Nope, nada.
I also find that one thing that helped me in lockdown, which I know is just generally good, is like I love the concept of spoon theory, and you've only got so many spoons. Every single person's got their own amount of spoons, and every activity you take is a spoon. And one thing I had to realize and in lockdown, and I think it can also sometimes apply for come downs, is that, okay, I might only have 10 spoons today. I'm not going to do much. But having a shower for 1 spoon and putting on some clothes for a second spoon can really, really help. Even if those clothing is a bit more comfortable on a Sunday and stuff than it is during the week. But having that, I think if you're on that Monday, Tuesday, and you need to come back into that routine, putting on some actual clothes and a shower, cooking yourself some breakfast, and if that's all you achieve for the day, it does help you feel a little bit better, and it actually makes you kind of start your day a little bit more instead of just going, I'm just going to sit at my desk. Sit here. Yeah.
Another maybe use for a 4th spoon, if you have one, is make smoothies. It's like one of the best ways to refuel after a big weekend. Fruit, veggies, oats, protein powder. your body will love you for it, and it's the easiest way to have a meal ever. So get fruit and veggies, they'll make you feel better, and you don't have to do much work.
I think I might need just a slight backtrack for a moment, and just a little bit of extrapolation on this spoon theory, because I was trying to bend the spoon. I feel like it's a different spoon theory. So, what are the spoons about, Erika?
So the way to kind of see it is that every single person, some people have like 50 spoons, some people have 100 spoons. And it's a way of kind of describing, I guess, mental health, and things that you might have something going on in your life, like the loss of a loved one, and you might be a 120 spoon sort of person, but because of what's going on, you've only got about 50 spoons. And so waking up in the morning, that's a spoon. Brushing your teeth, that's a spoon. Putting on clothes, that's a spoon. Answering an email, that's a spoon. Every single thing takes a spoon. And so what you have to do every day is kind of assess how many spoons you have and where you're going to dedicate those spoons. And I've actually got a spoon tattoo just here to always remind myself that I should always keep one spoon left for myself, because I can sometimes have the habit of giving out all my spoons to help other people who've got a bit less spoons on at that time. But I need to remember that I need to have a spoon still to look after myself, but it does always mean I've got one spoon left to give, which is myself. So I don't know, I think maybe Jessie or Adam might be able to elaborate on spoon theory, or even B. I think it's really gained in popularity over the past few years.
Yeah, it's like the same theory as you only have so many fucks to give, right? You don't have unlimited fucks, you don't have unlimited spoons, and that's a really hard one, I think, to manage and to recognise, because I think we naturally want to be there for all of our friends and we want to be there for all of our community. And I was speaking to a friend of mine recently about having to pull back a little bit from being the main support to somebody else, because he needed to be supportive of himself. And it can feel very difficult to put up those boundaries sometimes to protect your own needs and your own energy. It can feel like you're being selfish, but it is, it's the phrase is, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So similar with spoons, you can't do what you need to do if you've got none left, if you've given them all out, or if you've used them all up. So it's about being mindful of what you've got to do in the day to look after yourself first, and then how many you can give away after that, and whether or not you're perhaps biting off more than you can chew for that day. Like if you're depleted, if you're exhausted, if you're dehydrated, if you've been expending energy out for the last couple of days, then you really do need to regroup. Otherwise you just get a bit ragged around the edges, I think. Hydration is a big one. I always forget to drink enough water when I'm out and about in social settings, when I'm at a festival. And so I spend most of my recovery drinking tea, drinking water, staying away from things like caffeine and alcohol, just so I can sort of depuff my face, essentially.
Looks like some people in the comments are aware of the spoon theory, but thank you for extrapolating on that. That's not something I'd heard in that phrasing before, but yeah, it's a similar sort of concept, and I think we're all probably feeling a little bit less spoonless, less spoonful. We have fewer spoonfuls of sugar to help the medicine go round this year. I put a Mary Poppins reference in there. That gives me one extra spoon for the day. All right, let's talk about the future, because we're going to be rounding it out pretty soon. Again, if you do have comments, do leave them in the Facebook. Really appreciate everybody's comments and likes so far. The future of parties, it's going to be different. There's going to be restrictions and different ways that festivals and events and parties are going to organise themselves for at least the oncoming future. I'm not sure how long it's going to last for. It could be quite a while. I'm sure there's probably some things that will sort of stick around for ever. Never say forever, but for a long time to come. What sorts of things do you think we're going to see? How are parties going to change as we move forward, especially into 2021, maybe starting in New South Wales?
Why do you have to start it in New South Wales? Because we got sent the questions to this a few days ago, and I think Thursday. Okay, no, things had started to change then. We'd spoken on Wednesday about doing this panel, and the answer I would have given then is so different to where it is right now in the New South Wales experience. We were looking really, really good. We hadn't had any real community transmission for a long period of time. So I think I was getting a building sense of excitement of being like, fuck yeah, I'm going to be back out there doing DanceWize. We're going to be back at festivals. And now with what's happening in New South Wales, I expect that this will probably push things off for a little bit longer, but who knows? We don't know anything, and I think we can never predict the future. And I think this year has very much shown that we will never know what's around the corner, for better or worse. So hopefully something epic. Who knows, maybe these monoliths are aliens coming. I really don't think that, but who knows? So I think some of the things that we will see based on the current information we have, I think we'll generally see smaller size events going over a longer duration. So the same event will run multiple times over a week, over a weekend, over a couple of months, so that as many people as possible can go, but the number of people who will be there at any one time will be reduced. I think we're going to see hand sanitizer everywhere. I think we'll still, when this pandemic is over, because pandemics do always eventually come to an end. It just is a long, long, long time. As much as we want it to hurry up and be over, I'm sure we're going to see those keep your distance posters up for decades. And there'll be this crumpled little thing that there'll be parents telling their children, why does it say keep 1.5 meters away, mummy? Why? And they'll be like, well, there was a time. So I think we'll see some social distancing. I think hand sanitizer is going to be there. I think potentially shorter durations, more seated gigs for a while. I think dancing and that type of free social movement isn't something we're going to really be seeing. I think one thing we will see as well is there'll be a change in conditions of entry, which originally you weren't allowed any face coverings. Like that was not something you were allowed to bring into particularly hard style events. Now, as a part of, safety for people, you are allowed to have a mask. So I think mask wearing and that covering of your face is going to be something that will be permitted within music festivals and events. Those are the first things I can ramble off the top of my head. QR codes. QR codes forever. That's just life now. Luke, do you want to say anything?
I don't think I think you've covered a bunch of the big stuff. I think we also might see a bit of a shift in the scene. I think this year, particularly in New South Wales, has been a kind of like double whammy with the fires at the start of the year, cancelling a lot of events, the sort of increasing costs with user-based policing and things as well. I think a lot of the bigger festivals will be really struggling in this kind of environment to, bring back that kind of size event for a little while. But I think we will see the underground community, as it always does, sort of come in and fill some of those gaps, which brings its own sort of risks and challenges, but is also another space which people can come together and celebrate and have community. But I think maybe one of the things we can do is be sort of aware that we have a responsibility in going to these events in this kind of situation. If you choose to go, choose to do it safely and choose to get your mates to do it safely as well. And if you can influence any of the organization of that kind of stuff, I think that's also a really important thing to do in these times, because we know they're not going to stop, but we do want them to be as safe as possible for everyone.
Yeah, I'd mirror that, Luke. I think it's quite easy for, I think we may have been conditioned a little bit in the last maybe 10 years of bigger parties to be thinking, all my needs will be taken care of at the festival. They'll have toilets and showers and soap and this and that. And maybe we've forgotten the sort of self-sufficiency in part. I did have a thought at the beginning of COVID that doofers and psytrance lovers were maybe well equipped to deal with social distancing and masks and hand sanitizer, because especially in Victoria, these parties that are quite dusty, everyone carries a dust mask, everyone's always dancing at arm's length, which is cute. But it's something where we need to remember that the risks we take are very, very real, and to go out into a rural space and to potentially partake in risky activities in the sun, in heat, en masse, it can be more risky these days than it ever has been before with environmental concerns and stuff. So it's not all on the promoter. It's not all on the crew to look after thousands of people. We do need to fully take responsibility for our health, make sure that we've got our medications on us, make sure that we're not accidentally overloading the local rural health systems. You know, they're there for also their communities. So, yeah, taking it easy and really being mindful that it's not an environment that we should be going into and handing over our responsibility to somebody else and then going nuts. You know, we do need to hold ourselves well and to hold our friendship groups really well. There's something that, gosh, I wonder if, I remember reading about Blues Fest, I think it was, and they had this criteria in their insurance policy of just before COVID hit that they bought maybe a year or two ago. They were very lucky because it covered off viral infections and infections at the party as well. So it covered off COVID by accident, and no other festival that I've read about had that coverage because it's much more expensive to go higher up the line, essentially. So they were quite lucky, and they got a lot of their ticket holders' fees covered. But I do wonder about the financial viability of bigger parties, you know, especially when it comes to insurance costing. I think that'll be really challenging to predict. I mean, on a personal level, I was supposed to get married 3 weeks ago. It is impossible to plan an event in COVID. Like, our wedding was going to be in rural New South Wales, and the borders just opened like 2 weeks ago, and boom, they're shut again. It's like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I never thought I would see internal borders in Australia be closed. So I think even planning for the interstate and international audiences that we're used to is impossible. We're going to go down into smaller localised economies. And I think you're right, Adam. I think we do need to take responsibility for ourselves a bit more in our safety, and we need to be risk assessing ourselves and not just, you know, sort of lobbing that responsibility over to others who already have a lot on their plate, you know. So to be more active in our choices is a big thing. That's all from me. That's what I think is coming in the future. I think a lot more smaller parties, smaller communities, which I'm all down for. I think that makes my brain pretty happy. I'm excited about that prospect. Keep it simple, keep it humble, you know.
Yeah, I think everyone else has really sort of touched on all the main points. It will be quite interesting to see, because I think a lot of the sort of smaller kind of event groups probably have sort of closed down or had to like take a year off here and there, and haven't really been able to sort of survive the economic impact of it all. And so I think that we'll probably see some of the kind of larger groups now kind of offering these kind of smaller boutique packages. I think will become more common, and having sort of separate campgrounds and the glamping and all that kind of thing will probably be more common, I think, in a lot of events that are sort of multi-day. I know my partner and I bought a caravan during lockdown, and I think things like that, like seeing more people come into like doofs in their own kind of private space is also going to be something that becomes more common now, because we don't sort of know what's going to happen if we're going to sort of have this experience of maybe we go into lockdown, I don't know, for a month or so every year, or just sort of see how things kind of unfold. Everyone kind of still is up in the air. So I'm not sort of sure exactly how things will come about, but I think it'll be really interesting to sort of see how different events come up with really exciting opportunities from this.
And Adam started with a good / sad reminder that the year begun not with COVID, but with our country on fire. Some of the biggest events that we were planning on attending were cancelled due to smoke due to fires on site. I'm thinking of one festival in particular that's one of my favourite festivals, and got whammied twice. It got fires and then it got COVID. It didn't get COVID, but COVID happened, and then that you can't have a festival during that time. But on the on a positive side as well, something that I've seen and heard from people is that some people have, although it's not the same having an online, a streaming sort of environment or going to seeing an event through a computer screen or a TV screen, there are some people who have pointed out that they would, if this were happening in real life, they still wouldn't have been able to go. But now that there is that streamed component, they're able to access something that they weren't previously able to access, or whether it was too expensive, too far away, or there was some other difficulty in being able to access that event. So in some ways, I hope that we've learnt to be able to use the technology and hopefully be able to integrate the technology that we have to open up opportunities rather than, close each other off behind this pixel window that we see ourselves all through now. It's about 10 to 1 now, and we've gone a little bit longer than we expected, but are there any closing thoughts, closing advice, closing... geez, it's nearly the end of the year. We've only got nine days left of the year. Closing remarks from everyone.
Yeah. On that accessibility note, I think that employers and festival operators and everyone in the community is going to find it pretty hard not to keep things accessible now that we've proven that we can involve people in the community who couldn't physically be there in the past. So I'm talking the full range of physical disability as well as, learning disability. I think that we can be so much more inclusive post-COVID, which is really exciting. My thoughts are also, I had one more thought about preparation if you're going to party or find a festival, which is that we've mostly been locked inside for, 6 to 9 months. You're probably also going to get sunburnt because our skin is not conditioned to be inside for most of the year and then to burst out in the sun. So please slip slops that. I have been burnt this weekend myself and it's deeply uncomfortable. So look after yourselves, guys. Have a really wonderful summer. And if you see DanceWize at any small or large events or people within the community, please ask for more education. We can always learn more from each other.
I guess just like with festivals, your drug use and with what the year has been and what the year doesn't end on January 31st, it will continue on, is that this is a marathon and not a sprint, and do what you need to do to look after yourself to be able to survive through what is still going to be a long period of time before we're somewhere where we used to be, and hopefully that place where we are will be better than where it was. We don't want to go back to the old normal because there were still issues with that old normal. Let's work towards this time, towards something that's going to be better for ourselves, our community, for the nation, for First Nations people, for people with disabilities, for people of colour, for community and linguistically diverse communities, for alternative communities, the LGBTQIA plus community. Let us all work together to build something that is going to be more beautiful. Make sure you be kind to yourself, be kind to everyone else, and it's okay to keep a spoon to yourself, even if it's a cat spoon.
Yeah, I would just say, be really mindful about mixing things. I know a lot of people have had a bit of a drought of not being able to find certain substances during lockdown, and it's going to be really exciting now that you can access certain things and just being like, oh, I'll have a bump of this, I'll have a bump of that, and just sort of keeping in mind what things mix okay and what things don't mix very well at all, and just kind of checking in with yourself and just doing all those good harm reduction practices and going slow and taking much less than you usually would until you know exactly sort of where your tolerance is at will be a really good, helpful thing, I think, for some people.
Definitely. I think maybe just echoing what you said, B, with a specific one, just don't drink and have G together. Especially just never ever do that. It's really dangerous. But on a maybe slightly more positive note, just get help for your friends if you think they need it. It can turn what could be a bad story into quite a funny or good story if you do it on the early side. So yeah, look after yourself, look after your friends, and yeah, let's look forward to another year of some variety or another.
Yeah, let's hope it is a better year. Although, you know, keep expectations realistic. COVID's not going to go away like that. We've just seen that in New South Wales over the past week. And we need to, you know, remain vigilant, but also remain kind to ourselves and find new ways to be kind to ourselves in 2021 after such a strange year. I want to thank all of our panellists from Victoria and New South Wales today. Jessie Murray, Bridget Hayes, Erika Franklin and Adam Smith. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks.
And yeah, do make sure to give this little post a like and find some of the campaign material that we've been putting up. We'll have some more videos on the way for you before Christmas. And have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye. Bye.
And happy 25 years, DanceWize.
Yay!
Well done, team, and all of the old rave safe folks. That was an amazing 25 years. Here's to the next 25.
Happy B-Beamers.
See you guys.